So the bubble crops were invented by Daniel Brum and Nico Domurat, that you can see on this picture. They're scientists working in Dresden, Germany. As you can see on these pictures, the bubble crops are being commercialized, and anybody who wants to grow hydroponic lettuce at home can just order them and grow their own lettuce. It was not intended at first to be an experiment, but we made it an experiment with you. You were asking me why the plants growing under electrical artificial light grow faster than the one growing under natural light. Well, this is mainly a problem of quantity of light received by the plants. Here I have a piece of equipment which enables me to measure the quantity of light received by the plants. So I will show you, we'll do some measurements. I will show you that the electrical lamp are producing more light than the natural light we're receiving in our closed dome. I'm approaching the red and blue LEDs. I'm going to put this little sensor next to the bubble crop, and we'll see how much light the bubble crops are getting. So now I'm looking on my equipment, and I can see 200 units of light quantity. So that's quite a lot. Now I'm in a luminous part of the dome where I put some bubble crops. It's one part where the sun filtrates more than in other parts, and we'll do the same experiment. I'll put my sensor here in the middle and look how much light I get. I get 40 unit of light quantity. So the conclusion is the LED lamp are giving away 5 times more light quantity than we are receiving natural light in the most luminous part of the habitat. The last test is with our bubble crops next to our window, our only window. So I'm going to put this sensor on the desk with the bubble crop and see how much light they get here next to the window. And my readings give me 7. So they're really getting few light next to the window. Alright, so you were asking me if it is possible that a plug falls into the bottle. As you can see, this bottle crop here was a bit less lucky than the one on the side here. It's totally dry, like the water is not, like the root was not long enough, and the water has evaporated, so I'll have to add water. But even when it's dry, as you can see, it is not falling into the bottle. So I'm sorry about that, but I think your bottle crop got vandalized. So here I have one which was started on the 27th of April, and these ones were both started, these two were started on the 29th of April. These two were grown under LED light, whereas this one is just placed in a more luminous part of the hab. And as I showed you previously, it's getting less light, so you can really tell the difference between these two. Then this one's the same. They've been starting at on the same day, on the 5th of May. This one is growing under LED light, and this one is growing under, well, more natural light that it can find in a luminous part of the hab, and you can tell the difference. This one looks way more healthy. And again, these ones were started on the 13th of May, so about 2 weeks ago, and this one is grown under LED. This one is grown under natural light in the hab, and you can see that this one is more robust as well. So this is the status of our bubble crops so far.
To answer your question about Martian soil is made up of fine-grained particles with no organic material, unlike the soil we found here on Earth. So we use the term called regolith, which means that it's only made up of rock and dust. Much of the sand and dust has large rocks and stuff mixed in it, because there hasn't been as much erosion as there is on Earth. and a lot of it originates from lakes and rivers, or volcanic ash as well. We know that it contains a lot of iron and magnesium, sodium, and chlorides, and it's these perchlorate material that are concerned scientists because we know that it's unsafe for life. It could be a danger to astronauts. It also may affect the way we grow plants in it, so we're not quite sure yet if it can be used exactly the way we find it on Mars. What's interesting is where this analog mission is at here in Hawaii, that the soil here on the mountain is very much like that on Mars, except missing that sodium content. And if you were to find a similar to ash-like substance or volcanic rock for your own experiments, you could probably mimic Martian soil as close as you can here on Earth. And just so I could show you a little bit, this is a bag that I collected here on the mountain with different kinds of volcanic soil that simulates that we can find on Mars.
So yes, astronauts will go to Mars in a rocket. They will first be in a capsule, like the Orion capsule you can see on this picture. That this capsule will rendezvous and dock with a bigger spaceship. And here I have put some images of different concepts for spaceships to go to Mars. These are just concepts because no defined mission to Mars so far. So you can imagine that when you stay 8 months in a ship, you cannot stay in a small capsule only. You will need a living module, most probably a greenhouse module, an exercise module. The question about the food, how do we store 8 months of food to go to Mars? Where there are many solutions. One of them is to bring seeds with us and grow plants aboard the spaceship, different kind of plants bringing different kind of nutrients, and this could sustain the astronauts for 8 months. The other solution is to bring only packaged food, and in this case it would require way more storage. So probably a hybrid solution between packaged food and seeds to grow plants will be adopted so that the astronauts can be healthy for 8 months. The fuel is the same thing. It will all come into the spaceship, so we'll need to have very, very big tanks. That's why all the concepts you've seen here are rather big spaceships. How do we fit the habitat in the rocket? There are some concepts of Martian bases showing this. So here I'm showing you a concept which was developed by a space architect. So on this picture you see the landing capsule, which has some deployable parts on top. So this opens and it enables some inflatable parts on the side to inflate, and this is what will be the living module of the astronauts on Mars. So how do we fit the habitat in the rocket? Well, we fold it and then we deploy it on the surface. So we have one first question, which is how many people will go on Mars, which was asked by the fourth and fifth grader of the school in France.
I think that the first cruise will probably be a mix, somewhere between 4 and 6 people, just for the safety numbers.
Yeah. If you have only 4 people and something happens to one of them, that means you're at a crew of 3. So if you start with 6, something happens to one of them, you still have 5.
Thank you. What is the aim of a future Mars mission, Annie and Tiffany? What do you think?
Well, I think one of the biggest aims for a future Mars mission is to determine if there's life on Mars or if there was the possibility for life on Mars.
Right now we have some stepping stones before we get to Mars. That includes the ISS and going to an asteroid and then furthering our technology to go beyond into deep space to Mars. So right now we have a fleet of robotic missions that are scouting out the surfaces, and then we will further advance our space technology by sending humans there. So that's going to be a big success once we can successfully gain a human exploration mission there, and then we can advance science to go even farther than Mars. So there's a lot to look forward to.
Yeah, so science exploration and life on Mars are one of the main goals of a future Mars mission. Another question, which was asked by the 4th and 5th grader from the school in France, was how will the astronaut cover the base with Martian regolith? What tool will they use? Tiffany?
Oh, is this me? Okay. There's been a lot of different theories and a lot of technology development in this area. So some of the ways they're thinking of doing this is one would be to utilize an already existing crater and then put a habitat in there and cover it up with regolith, so that it would provide additional protection to the crew. There's also some theories of utilizing water and food storage capabilities and surrounding your habitat with basically your water and food, and that would increase the size of the shielding and therefore increase the amount of protection. Those are just a couple. There's a lot of different technologies that are being worked on though.
Okay, now we have a series of questions from the KSC school in Bremen, Germany, which was, are sunstorms a problem for living on Mars? I think it was Tiffany.
Fantastic. It's me again, guys. So solar flares and solar storms are a very big problem for the Martian surface. It has a much thinner atmosphere than Earth. It does not have any geomagnetic protection, so the Earth has a geomagnetic field that protects it from ionizing radiation and some of the more harmful particles. So since Mars doesn't have that, the only benefit Mars has is that it's farther from the sun, so the sunlight's not quite as powerful that reaches there, but you're still, without the geomagnetic shielding and the atmosphere, the levels of radiation that the astronauts would receive would be, could be very harmful if not protected against.
Thank you. Now, Ross, a question for you. Do you think there are other living organisms in the universe? And if yes, are they intelligent?
At this point, our early studies of nearby stars have shown that there are planets and solar systems around many of the nearby stars, and I think it would be a shame if there wasn't intelligent life elsewhere in the universe. The scale at which we see the universe and how many stars there are and how many planets there are around those stars seems to indicate that even if the probability of life existing is less than 1%, that still means that there are billions of habitable planets. And on those planets, it could be that intelligent life has arose or is currently arising. So I think it's only a matter of time before we discover evidence for life in other solar systems and perhaps even intelligent life.
Thank you. Seth from Miss Dorgan's class in Indiana asked us if we could make a solar-powered rocket. So, Casey, what are your ideas on that?
Okay. One, the idea is being explored, but it has to be an in-orbit or interplanetary type craft. The amount of energy that would be produced by a solar thermal rocket, where the solar energy excites the molecules of a certain chemical, and as they build up pressure, exit the vehicle. It would work really well in space, and there are some Russian spacecraft that have tested this idea, but it doesn't work very well from the surface to orbit.
Thank you. This is the interior of our suit. That's the cooling system where we put water and ice in it and it goes through that hose. And then here you have all the electronics with the controlling board. And so you can see there is no oxygen bottle in these suits.
Hello everybody! So we are currently in the airlock simulating decompression so that we can open the door and go into the thin Martian atmosphere. We simulate this decompression for 5 minutes. So we are now outside, and one of the questions was,
What are you doing when you go out on the volcano?
here, and alright, so here Annie is doing some measurements of the gases examining it. He found a good sample and he's putting it in his bag.
Here, Annie and Casey are putting a ladder next to our water tank to go measure the level of remaining water in the tanks, so that we know when we have to ask our robots to come and fill up the tanks with new water.
One of the questions you had was, what materials are our spacesuit made of? Well, the one I'm wearing has been made specially for this purpose, an analog spacesuit. It's made of special fabric and tubing. My colleagues here, Casey and Annie, are wearing a hazmat suit, and these are derived from hazardous materials. Une des questions, c'était est-ce que c'est bien d'être dans une combinaison spatiale? Alors oui, c'est bien parce que ça nous permet d'aller dehors. Par contre, c'est vrai qu'elles sont un peu lourdes et on a un peu du mal à bouger, mais on peut faire des mouvements de base. Voilà. We can dance around. Let me ask my colleagues now. Annie, how does it feel to be in a spacesuit? You have to be very aware of how much more space you take up, for sure. I mean, I'm a pretty tiny person, but when I'm in a suit like this, I take up a lot more volume, so you have to be aware of all the steps that you take. It's fun, though. Casey, how do you feel being in your spacesuit?
Well, it's a little bit more difficult to do some basic tasks. It's using these things a little harder. It's nice to have this protection against the elements here. Even harder, like sharper volcanic rocks, this offers a little bit more protection.
Thank you. And we are back in the airlock, simulating a refresher. 5 minutes.
Behind me there are the solar panels collecting sunlight and storing the energy into batteries. These batteries are 10 kilowatt hours. It means that they can power 10 kilowatt during an hour. We don't have such big power expenditure though, so the batteries are charging throughout the day and they last us a whole night without charging, and the next morning it's the same cycle again. The next series of questions concerns our psychological study, and the questions were asked by the school in France and the class of Indiana. The first question was, how many questions per questionnaires do we have to fill in every day? So we have 5 different questionnaires per day. 2 of them are really short, about 5 questions. Then we have 2 longer questionnaires to do at the end of the day, and these ones have about 20 to 30 questions each. And then we have 1 last questionnaire, which is like a journal entry, a diary, and it has an additional 7 questions. So that's pretty much 100 questions per day. And the second question was, where are these questionnaires sent to? Well, they're sent to the team of psychologists who are studying us. They're studying our crew performance and interaction. This brings us to the next question. What do we have around our neck, which is flashing, this white necklace? That was also asked by Mason from Ms. Rogan's class in Indiana, and by some students in France too. These white boxes measure our level of interactions with each other. So when we talk to each other and we are facing each other, it starts blinking and flashing green light. This means we are interacting. It also measures the level of sound and of light which we are receiving throughout the day. Finally, Annie wanted to tell you about the little thing we have around our arm and what it is measuring.
Okay, so this badge on our arm is measuring our body temperature, our sleep cycles, how much we're on our feet every day, as well as our activity levels throughout the day. So it tells us how harsh or not harsh we're being on our bodies.
Right, so these questions were asked by the Ökonomisches Gymnasium zu Bremen in Germany. And the first question is, what do you miss the most? Ross, Tiffany, and Casey, do you have anything to answer?
Sure. So the thing that I miss the most is the sounds of the external world, because up here in isolation on the slopes of Mauna Loa, we don't get any human activity, animal activity, or even plant life for that matter. So things like the sounds of cars driving by or birds chirping, those are completely absent, as you'd expect on Mars. Really the only thing we can hear is the occasional windstorm that kicks up dust, and because we're here in Hawaii instead of on Mars, the occasional rainstorm. And other than that, the only noises that we hear are the ones that we generate ourselves or that habitat systems generate. So I'm really looking forward to getting back to Earth to hear some of the sounds of nature again.
For me, life here is very repetitive, I think for most of us, and I kind of miss the spontaneity that comes with being on the outside, not knowing who you're necessarily going to see, or having people, come over and visit, things changing every day. That's mostly what I miss.
One of the things that we can tell that's around us, but we can't experience ourselves with fresh air. When we're outside in our EVA suits, we can feel the effects of the wind, the sounds of it. We can feel it in the hat, we can hear it, but we can't actually perceive it. And that's something that I'm looking forward to on the outside.
What's the most interesting aspect of what you're doing?
I think that the most interesting aspect of living here in the habitat is the kind of solutions that we're coming up to the problems that we're facing. So when we have something like a power outage, we have to find a solution immediately and implement it. And that means that for future crews, both in the high seas mission and perhaps even missions to Mars, we're generating protocols and procedures that will allow them to solve those problems even faster than we were able to. And I think that that's by far the most interesting aspect of living here, is being able to help out in one small way with the human effort of space exploration.
Thanks. Casey, what do you like the least about being here?
I suppose if I'm being honest, I do miss family and friends. That's the separation from that, but it's inevitable being gone this long.
Thank you. So the next question was asked by Michaela from Miss Organ's class in Indiana, and it was, were you nervous at first? Were you nervous before coming into the habitat? Annie, what do you think?
No. I wasn't really nervous. I think I was nervous about forgetting something to pack because it was sort of ambiguous on what to bring exactly. So I probably overpacked a little bit more than I should have, but I wasn't really that nervous.
I wasn't nervous either. I was very impatient of being here, but not being nervous of being closed for a month in a habitat. As Annie said, probably just nervous about the packing and forgetting something and preparing everything before the mission starts. But nervous about the mission, no. Michaela, you also asked us if the simulator feels like home, and I think Tiffany, Casey, and myself have something to say about this.
Well, for me, mostly because of my background, home ends up being wherever I happen to go. I moved a lot, so for me the habitat feels very much like home.
I think I agree with that. My time in the service has put me in a lot of remote stations before, so to a certain extent you just become used to the environment around you, and for now this is my home.
Yeah, I agree with both of them. I've also moved a lot, and yeah, the habitat feels like home. We're like a little family, and it's very nice. Michaela, you also asked us what we have learned about Mars so far. I think Annie and Tiffany had something to answer to that.
I learned.
She said your name first.
I learned that I have a lot to learn about Mars.
For me, I really noticed that things are never as simplistic as you think they're going to be. Something that would normally take you a few minutes takes you 30 minutes because you don't have the same support you would on the outside. And that's just, I mean, even walking outside, we have to put on an EVA suit, which requires, 30, 45 minutes of prep work beforehand.
And we have to ask for permission for that.
Yeah, and we have to ask permission for that. So, and I mean, just walking outside in and of itself takes longer. You're carrying a heavy suit. It's just, things just aren't quite as simple as you think they should be.
Thanks. Michaela also asked us, if you were actually on Mars, would you be both physically and mentally prepared?
I think with this mission in particular has made it more aware to me as I can safely answer, no, I'm not ready. There'd be a lot more training that'd be required and a lot more understanding of the various aspects that would make the mission possible that are just not complete yet.
Yeah, I think at this point I can definitely agree. I mean, as a crew, we work very, very well together. But if we were really to get sent to Mars, more training would be needed, more specialization in specific fields, to really make sure we could have a successful and scientifically beneficial mission.
I agree with Casey and Tiffany. Well, personally, I'm not ready for a mission to Mars. Mentally, I'm pretty sure I would be, in terms of being close for a couple of months or years. Physically and in terms of knowledge that I need to acquire, I'm not ready at all. We need way more training than what we have had for this mission.
Yeah, we seem pretty well equipped to live in a habitat on Earth with close access to our mission supporters, even emergency evacuation procedures if necessary. But on Mars, those wouldn't be present at all. And so even the smallest problem that we encounter and solve here becomes a huge problem there. And I think for the same reason, you'd have to have years of preparation before a crew like us could actually successfully live on Mars.
Would I be ready for a mission to Mars? No. And that echoes everything that everyone just said.
Thanks. So Trevor from Mr. Organ's class in Indiana was asking us, have there been any fights or disagreement in the crew? We're a small group of persons and a bit like a tiny family, and as you can experience every day in your family, there are disagreements. You don't always agree with what the other person has decided or what they're doing, and yeah, as any group of people, we have things to work on, but we do it in an effective manner, and so far it's been good. We haven't had any major fight, if that's what you want to know.
We solve these things quickly because we're in such a small space. Letting something like that fester could be severely hampering to mission completion.
Yeah. Anything to add? Hannah from Mr. Organ's class was asking us, what's your favorite thing about Mars?
My favorite thing from simulated Mars is the view from our window. I think if I was really on Mars, it would be all the exploration and science that we would get to participate in.
I'd say mine's similar. From a simulated standpoint, I'm learning a great deal because of this, the environment that we're in, learning about how what it would really take to live on Mars. And I think that's really interesting because, well, we understood to a certain extent before we came to the mission what those particular factors might be. Actually getting to live through them has taught me a great deal.
That's our washing machine.
Yeah, sorry about this noise.
the weak link? I always laugh first.
The next question, asked by Tapanga in Ms. Rogan's class, Indiana. Is there anything you would have done to prepare for this mission? Tiffany and Casey.
I think there are a number of small things I wish that I had taken time to read up a little bit more about or understand a little bit better. We found that, like,
certain things that we take for granted in normal life, we really do have to pay attention to more here. Like the output of power of our various electronics and HAB systems, something that it's not something we take into account back on Earth, so to speak, but here is something we have to think about every day.
Well, my answer is a little similar to that, but I wish I had started basically simulating being on Mars a little bit earlier before I got here, so all the changes weren't quite such a shock when we first got here, so delaying my email or communications with people, that type of stuff. Thank you.
Next question was asked by Savannah from Miss Organ's class, Indiana, and she wanted to know what is our favorite thing to explore. So personally, my favorite thing to explore here, being on simulated Mars, is to go out in a spacesuit and go walk in the lava fields, and find some features of previous lava eruption, like lava tubes or specific rocks. I really like that. In real life, I really like to discover and explore new countries and new landscapes. What about you, Ross?
So I'm also in the same boat. I love exploring the features that are around the habitat, from the volcanic fissure and pit craters to the skylights and lava tubes. But one of the things that I am enjoying discovering is how all the systems inside the habitat work as well. As it turns out, we have a lot of automated systems and a sensor network, and interacting with that is a completely new and different experience for me. So it's not simply exploring physical reality, but also digital reality and how everything interacts, from our radios to the lights in our bedrooms.
What about you, Casey?
I think I'm going to mirror Lucy a little bit on this one. When I'm not pretending to be an astronaut on this mission, one of the things I like to do is go backpacking and rock climbing, and the ability here to go out and see some of the volcanic features on the mountain here and how they are very much in parallel with some of the features on Mars has been a great interest to me.
The next question was asked by Trevor from Miss Organ's class in Indiana, and he wants to know what the floor is made of, so I'm going to show you, Trevor.
Good question.
So this is how our floor looks like. So this is carpet, as you can see. And in the kitchen we have painted wood. So the carpet we have here in the living area is actually hardwood, and carpet is just glued on it. The next question was asked by next question was asked by Austin from Miss Organ's class in Indiana, and he wants to know how the dome stays on the volcano, and Ross has an answer for that.
Sure. So the dome, just like a lot of structures on Earth, is actually built on a concrete pad foundation. So there's not a lot keeping it on the ground other than gravity. The actual structure of the dome has stakes that keep it in the ground as well. But because it's such a high surface area and such a light structure, when the wind kicks up during the night, we actually get a lot of motion of the dome. So there are some nights where I fear for our safety here inside, because it just seems like the wind is going to take us and carry us away. But that's just not the case, because it was built very solidly.
Yeah, if you've slept under a tent already in a windy night, this is exactly the same feeling and the same noise.
Yes.
Elias from Miss Organ's class in Indiana is asking us if there is a possibility that the volcano erupts. Casey?
It's been almost exactly 30 years since the last eruption of Mauna Loa, and it is considered one of the most dangerous volcanoes in the Western Hemisphere because it is active. They know that the magma chamber below the mountain continues to fill, though it's not likely to erupt right now. It's one of those possibilities that does exist.
And on the same topic, Spencer from Miss Organ's class in Indiana was asking if there have been any fumes which have leaked from the volcano.
Not from this volcano, but Kilauea, which is not very far away, does put out a number of semi-dangerous gases on a regular basis, but because we're at a much higher elevation, they are not being transported to where we're at.
Thank you. Lastly, Spencer wanted to know if we have done any tests with rocks, like adding chemicals or liquids to them.
It's a good question. I looked this up to understand this a little bit better. One of the reasons we haven't been doing it, but is that the rocks here are all very mafic basalts, which means that they're dense silica-rich lava rocks. If we were looking at a sedimentary rock from like an ancient ocean type material or a limestone, you could use hydrochloric acid or even household vinegar to test the effervescence of it by looking at the carbonate material, but the rocks here don't contain that same carbonate material, so that's why we haven't done that experiment.
Thank you.
So all the papers you see on my wall here were actually things I have opened every week. A friend of mine made it for me. And here are the postcards you see on my wall were also given by friends and family who wrote to me. And this is a special one from my sister. And here, these are all the letters remaining for me to open. So as you can see, I still have a lot to go for these 2 months. So yes, we do have things from our family and friends. This is our chores lists. This is how we organize ourselves in terms of cooking, washing the dishes, washing the bathroom, vacuum, the whole base.
Lastly, you asked us questions about our background and where we work or have worked in the past. And Riley wanted to know if anybody of us had worked for NASA before. So I think Annie can answer this question, and then Tiffany.
I currently work at NASA at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida.
And I had the opportunity to intern at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. Thank you. Riley also asked us how we found out about this mission. Casey, how did you find out about this mission?
Actually, an associate of mine kind of referenced it a few times, and I did some research and thought that this might be an interesting mission. I was a little unsure at first, but a mutual friend who also works at the program recommended that I apply.
Tiffany? So I currently work with analog habitats and analog suits, and in researching that, we found out about the high seas habitat. And when I found out that they were looking for applicants, I thought it would be a great opportunity. Well, I work with plants, and last year I saw that there was a food study going on here, and I had even envisioned the possibility of sending some plant experiment here, but it was too late. And then in October, or maybe September, when the call for candidates was released, a friend of mine actually posted the link on Twitter, and I saw it, and that's how I started researching even more about the mission and applying for the mission.
So I worked as a teaching assistant at the University of Alberta Observatory, where news like analog simulations was a commonplace thing. And when I learned about high seas in particular, I thought it was a good match for the level of education that I had. And I applied for the first mission and was ultimately not selected. But when I reapplied for the second mission, here I am today.
NASA puts out a daily news digest, so I saw a little blurb written about the study in there, and a lot of our advanced exploration system technology goes under analog studies or simulations, so I thought this would be a good opportunity to advance some of our research that we're doing.
Finally, Kobe from Ms. Organ's class in Indiana asked us if any of us has ever been in the space program before. So, Kobe, if you want to know if we have ever been in an astronaut program, the answer for all of us is no.
Not
But
yet.
yeah, not yet. But if you want to know if we have worked on space-related projects,